Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be ranking every single AR currently in Cold War Zombies from worst to best. On top of that, we're going to have class setups for each one of these ARs at the very end of the video. And if you're looking for the best, ARs to go right now in Zombies to get Gold Viper, that way you can unlock Plague Diamond for the AR categories, you've only got to do 5 of them. This game launched with 5 ARs, and you don't have to just do the base ones. You can do any set of the ARs. So if you're looking for the best ones to do, just pick the top 5 in this video here. And one last thing before we actually get into this video, if there's a certain AR you like and it's ranked really low on this, that really doesn't matter. Use whatever ARs you want to use best, whatever you feel most comfortable with, but we are going to be ranking all of these in terms of DPS from the worst to the best. But I mean, it's Zombies, it's a PvE mode. Use whatever you're most comfortable with, even if it is lower on the list. And just like that, we're now loaded onto D Machina. Obviously, I'm going to go ahead, get the weapons we're going to test out, open up the map, get Pack-a-Punch open. While I'm doing that, if you're new here and want to sub, I would greatly appreciate that. We're working our way towards 150k subs, and on top of that, I got to give a massive thanks to everyone who's going to like, comment, and watch this video in its entirety, as those 3 things help me and my channel out massively. Now, coming in at very last at the number 9 slot is going to be the EM2. And this weapon wasn't always the worst AR in the game, but unfortunately, this game has global stats. So when they nerf something in multiplayer, it also affects the stats in Zombies. And ever since this has been launched, people in MP have been complaining about how OP this AR was, how it's the best weapon in the game. And when they nerfed it in MP, it negatively affected it quite a bit in Zombies. It wasn't the best AR to begin with. It was already a mid-tier AR, but after the nerf, it definitely does by far the least amount of damage in Zombies. The one thing about this weapon, though, is it actually on early rounds doesn't feel that bad. Like, that's one thing when I first started using this weapon, when we first got it introduced in the game, I thought this was potentially going to be one of the better ARs because of how well it performs on low rounds. But because of damage rounding and how slow it shoots, it drops off very, very quickly. And if you've ever taken this to health cap, you know this weapon just does not hold up to pretty much most weapons in the game. This is one of the worst weapons in the entire game. It doesn't feel like it on earlier rounds, and if you're only going on like earlier rounds, it's not that big of a deal, but I would definitely not recommend taking this to the health cap. Now, clocking in at the number 8 spot, also doing 59,000 damage per second, is gonna be the KRIG. Funny enough, the KRIG actually does less damage per second than the EM2. The only reason I'm putting the EM2 below the KRIG is since it is a slower shooting weapon, it is going to be affected way more by damage rounding as you go to higher rounds. So even though the EM2 is going to do more damage per second, it is going to take longer to kill zombies the higher round you go compared to the KRIG, even though the KRIG is technically doing less damage per second. So, KRIG has been kind of the worst weapon in Zombies. Not the worst weapon. It's been the worst AR in Zombies for a very long time. But the EM2 after nerf kind of dethroned it for the worst AR in Zombies. But, I mean, it's still a usable weapon. But the KRIG, it does so much less damage than most of the other ARs in Zombies. And now coming in at the number 7 spot, we've got the C58 with 62,000 DPS. And in my opinion, this is the last bad AR. I kind of categorize the ARs in 3 different categories. We've got the bad, the mid, and the good. And this one's at the very top of the bad list. And I mean, it's usable. Like I said, every weapon in this game is usable, but almost every other AR in the game is going to be better than it. And it suffers from overkill damage rounding because of how slow it shoots as well. Now in the number 6 spot, we got the QZB also coming in at 62,000 DPS. And just like the KRIG and the EM2, this is doing less damage than the weapon that came before it. The C58 actually does a little bit more DPS than what this weapon does. But since it shoots faster and damage rounding, once you get to higher rounds, this is going to be killing quite a bit quicker, even though it does less DPS. And in my opinion, this is our first mid-tier AR. Everything before this was kind of in the bad tier. And the mid-tier ARs are kind of just meh ARs. They're not spectacularly good, and they're not, super bad. They're just kind of here, and this is the first one in that category, in my opinion. And now for the AR, and the number 5 spot, we have the XM4 at 63,000 damage per second. And just like the QZB, this is just a mid-tier AR. All these 3 ARs are going to be in the mid-tier category. It's not, terrible, but at the same time, it's not spectacular either. It's not going to be something you're going to strive to get out of the box. It's not something you're going to spawn in with. But if you have it, I mean, hey, it's going to perform well, and it does what it needs to do. Now for our number 4 slot, we've got the AK-47 clocking in at 65,000 DPS. And this is just a slightly better XM4. Once again, another mid-tier AR. It's got a little bit more recoil than the XM4, but it does a little bit more damage, and the recoil is still super controllable. So it's not the best AR, but it'll get the job done. And now coming in the number 3 spot, we got the FARA with 71,000 DPS, and this in my opinion is our very first like actually really good AR, and you can see that massive jump in DPS from 65,000 to 71,000. This thing is one of the ones you can take to super high rounds, and it's actually just going to completely fry. And I mean, everything past this point is like a top dog. And now for the number 2 spot, we have the GROZA with 75,000 damage per second. And for the longest time, this in my opinion was the single best AR in zombies. But since then, we've got some nerfs and buffs, and the thing in the number 1 spot has gotten 2 pretty big buffs since then, edging it ahead. But this is still an amazing AR, and it is definitely one that you will not regret using. Amazing hip fire, amazing ADS time, and we are on the health cap of zombies right now. So this is how this is going to perform even on like round 935, and you can see this is still holding its own very well, absolutely shredding through zombies. So if you're looking for a good AR to use, definitely use the GROZA, and this should definitely be one that you use if you're trying to get Plague Diamond ARs. And now finally, coming in the number 1 spot, we got the FFAR with 82,000 DPS. And this, out of all of the weapons in zombies, has had one of the rockiest roller coasters in this game's life cycle. It was pretty good in zombies when the game first came out. It was actually pretty decent. Then it got nerfed, and it became probably the worst AR in the entire game in zombies. And then it got buffed, and it became a pretty decent AR, and then it got buffed again with Season 5, and it absolutely shreds. This is a weapon that I take to round 100 all the time, and even on Penthouse, this can just fry through zombies. It is definitely the best AR, and if you've used it since the buff, you know this thing absolutely shreds. And one of the best parts is this thing has an extremely fast fire rate, and fast fire rate guns aren't nearly as affected by damage rounding when you get to higher rounds. So not only does it have an insane DPS, it also has a crazy high fire rate, so it doesn't get the negative effects that a lot of the other ARs suffer with. And if you haven't tried this since they buffed it, I know a lot of people used this weapon when the game first came out, kind of writ it off as being just an absolutely garbage weapon. But if you haven't tried it since the buff, I highly recommend going back in game and trying it out, because it is definitely one of the single best weapons in zombies right now. And with that, guys, that concludes our entire tier list. And keep in mind, I mean, if something you like was lower on the list, this is zombies. Any weapon is honestly usable. Even the worst AR can be taken to round 100 in this game. It's not that big of a deal. Use whatever you're most comfortable with. But that's the ranking list right there, guys. With that, we're going to go right in to the class setups for all these weapons, and for the most part it's going to be pretty similar, but there are some weapons that things change up a little bit because they have some extra negative effects for certain attachments. But before we go into the class setup, definitely let me know how you feel about my ranking list. What would you change on this? Do you completely agree with me, or would you move some stuff around? Definitely let me know kind of your list below. And with that, thanks for watching, guys, and let's move into the class setups. So now for the class setup for the EM2, and I'm going to take a tad bit longer on this one just to kind of explain the reasoning I'm picking each and every attachment, because we get tons of questions each time I do this. So for the optic for this, I like the default optic, so I don't run any optic on it. But for most weapons, I run the Microflex LED. For the muzzle, I run the flash guard on pretty much every single weapon in the game. Yeah, you do get more increased equipment drop with these later ones, but I don't want to take the negative hit with stuff. I am perfectly fine with just the normal increased equipment drop rate. So this is all I run on weapons. For the barrel, this one specifically, I'm running the Cavalry Lancer because after the nerf, the max fire rate is nerfed when you use the Task Force barrel. So yeah, you get plus 6% damage, but I don't want that minus 7% fire rate. At that point, for me, it's just not worth it, and I'd rather get the extra armor damage. For the body, this one's kind of sketchy. Depending on what round you're on, it kind of changes what's better. The Ember sighting point, you get more increased salvage drop, so you're going to be able to max out your weapons quicker. But on high rounds, you definitely want to be running this. And if you could only choose one of these, I would just spawn in with this. I know a lot of people will make blueprints, and they'll start off with the Ember sighting point, and then once they max out everything, they'll apply a blueprint. But obviously the whole blueprint system is very glitchy, and you run the risk of bugging out your weapon. So if you can only pick one, this one's hands down better. Hipfire accuracy is one of the single most important things in zombies, and you go from 30 to 40, and that extra 10% is so much more worth it than the increased salvage drop. But if you're able to use both, this on lower rounds and this on higher rounds, that's the best way to do it. For the underbarrel, I'm running the Infiltrator grip, mainly because I want that plus 5% movement speed, and the shooting move speed's also super cool for training as well. So usually I try to find the one that gives the movement speed and the shooting move speed. For the magazine, pretty much every single weapon in the game, the bottom magazine is going to be better. I know that usually there's one that gives you more ammo, but you lose a lot of DPS when you get these because these reload slower, and overall you're going to be doing less damage and it's going to take longer to go through the entire round. The weapon just kills zombies faster overall when you pick the bottom one. For the handle, running the speed tape for the ADS time. ADS isn't super important, but we definitely don't want a negative effect to the sprint of fire, so speed tape's really the only option because the other two options just give you flinch resistance, which I don't really care for in zombies. And then for the stock, this one's super important. You definitely never want to choose these bottom three because these give you negative hipfire accuracy. These are probably the worst attachments you can put on any weapon in the game, leaving you with these top three. This one gives you aim, walking, movement speed. Don't really care for that. Sprint to fire time, which is nice, but that really doesn't matter too much once you have stamina up. Overall, I get the most use out of the slide speed. This is definitely helpful for training around zombies and maneuvering around. I slide a lot and it's very powerful, especially on higher rounds for dodging super sprinters. So most of the time I'm going to run the duster stock if I'm going to pretty high rounds. That being said, I'm now going to move over to the KRIG, and now we're going to speed run through the rest of these now that you got the general idea of what we're picking here. So for the KRIG, for the optic, we've got the microflex. For the muzzle, we've got the flash guard. The barrel is the bottom one here. For the body, we've got the SWAT. For the underbarrel, running the infiltrator grip. For the magazine, we're running the bottom one. The handle is the speed tape, and the stock is going to be the duster stock. Now moving on to the C58. Once again, we're going to be using the microflex. For the muzzle is going to be the flash guard. The barrel is the task force barrel. The body is the SWAT 5. The underbarrel is the infiltrator grip. The magazine is the bottom one. The handle is the speed tape, and the stock is going to be the duster stock. Now for the QZB, for the optic, we're running the microflex. For the muzzle, running the flash guard. For the barrel, we're running the task force barrel. For the body, we're running the SWAT 5. The underbarrel is the infiltrator grip. The magazine is the bottom one here. The handle is the speed tape, and the stock is going to be the duster stock. Now for the XM4, for the optic, we're running the microflex. For the muzzle, running the flash guard. For the barrel, running the task force barrel. The body is the SWAT 5. The underbarrel is the infiltrator grip. The magazine's the bottom one. The handle's the speed tape, and the stock is going to be the duster stock. Now moving on to the AK. For the optic, we've got the microflex. For the muzzle, we've got the flash guard. The barrel is the Spetsnaz RPK barrel. The body is the GRU 5. The underbarrel is the infiltrator grip. The magazine's the bottom one. The handle is the speed tape, and the stock is going to be the duster stock. Now for the FARA, for the optic, we've got the microflex, the muzzle's the flash guard, the barrel's the Spetsnaz RPK, the body's the GRU 5, underbarrel's the infiltrator grip, the magazine's the bottom one, the handle's the speed tape, and the stock is the duster stock. Then moving on to the GROZA here. For the optic, we've got the microflex, the muzzle's the flash guard, the barrel is the very bottom one here, the body is going to be the GRU 5. The underbarrel is the infiltrator grip. The magazine's the bottom one. The handle's the speed tape. And for the stock, we're going to have the duster pad. Then last but not least, for the FFAR, for the optic, we've got the microflex. For the muzzle, we've got the flash guard. The barrel is going to be the task force barrel. The body is the SWAT 5. The underbarrel is going to be the infiltrator grip. The magazine is going to be the bottom one. The handle is going to be the speed tape. And for the stock, we're going to have the duster stock. So that right there is all of the class setups for all of them. Like I said, we kind of we kind of went through the last set of these really quickly because it's pretty repetitive. That way you can just kind of find what you want, and you can kind of pause it if you want an individual breakdown. But there's no reason to waste a ton of time breaking down all 9 of these weapons, adding an additional 5 to 10 minutes onto this video. I want to take the last moment here to thank everyone who became a YouTube member or a Twitch sub, and an extra special thanks to everyone who became an Unlock Plus Plus member on YouTube. We get the Legend Sergeant CJ, the ETOOL lawyer you don't cross Hoss, the DMCA claim waiting to happen Snap, Hunter Don Doe, the man whose name should be really easy to pronounce, Yamaster, the friend who always comes through, Drew, and then we have Luke.